Hello and welcome back to the Keep Right On podcast for a Wrexham special. I'm joined by Nathan Salt of the tongue-twisting podcast Rob Ryan Red. Nathan, thank you for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you for having me on, and you nailed it first try, Rob Ryan Red. So very grateful to be on. Very looking forward to the game. It's I think the biggest game in the EFL of all three divisions so far this season.
Definitely of all three leagues so far this season. I've seen a few people say it's the biggest League One game in history. I'm not so sure about that because obviously there have been some big names down in League One in the not so distant past. Talking generally about Wrexham's start to the season, it's been quite good. 4 wins, 1 draw from the first 5 fixtures. The last 4 games have all seen clean sheets. Seems to be a pretty settled 11 Phil Parkinson has got there. Has it been an easy transition to League One football as it looks?
I mean, it's gone a lot better than I think we thought it was, because when the fixtures came out, we thought that's quite a tricky start, actually. Wycombe, have got ambitions. They've got a lot of cash. I think they're going under the radar that they are filthy rich, maybe not spending it like the rest of us, cough cough Birmingham City, but they are a decent outfit, probably in the top half. We managed to get by them 3-2. Also we had Bolton away. That was a tricky game, but we ended up deserving a point there. Shut them out with a clean sheet. Peterborough, they've always been really, really battle tested, really good at League One. They didn't have a shot on target against us at their place at London Road, so we did really well to nullify them and make them look very average. Gone and beaten Shrewsbury without getting out of second gear, really. So generally it's been flawless. And then we also beat Reading in there as well, made Reading look very, very average. And Reading were very good, I thought, against Birmingham on the opening day, and they were probably unfortunate not to win that game before Alfie May scored late on. Look, I wouldn't say easy, because that's a word I shouldn't really be banding about before Monday, because it's obviously going to get much, much tougher when you go away to St Andrews under the lights. But I think you've seen the benefit of consistency and partnerships built up over the years, and a system that is bigger than any one individual. We haven't had Paul Mullin start any of the 5 league games so far, and we're top of the league. So that is a good sign. That is a sign that Phil Parkinson's system is very much a plug and play type. You can put players in to a system that's been consistent and solid for the years he's been at the club. And 3-5-2 is his formation, is his system, and everybody knows their role really well. So am I surprised we're top? A little bit, but am I sort of completely blown away? No, because we've put really, really good foundations in place.
Yeah, I think everyone expected Wrexham to be kind of in contention, didn't they? Not necessarily top, but be in contention. The bookies as well have had Wrexham as one of the pre-season favourites. Obviously, Birmingham City kind of way out, given the money they've spent as favourites. Were they the noises you heard from Wrexham? Because I remember listening to an interview Phil Parkinson gave not long after promotion, was kind of looking forward to going into a league where Wrexham weren't the big fish, they weren't the biggest spenders, and they could kind of fly under the radar. But, here we are 5 games in, top of the league, they can't really fly under the radar anymore.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans actually were looking at maybe a playoff push, maybe just sneak into the playoffs, top 10, top 8, and then try and sneak into the playoffs. I think before a ball was kicked, a lot of fans would have gone, that's pretty solid. We've had back-to-back promotions. You go in and finish top 10 in League One, and then you go on and build the following season. And Rob McElhenney even conceded that recently in an interview he did, where he said, yeah, from what he gathered, a lot of fans were quite happy to just maybe sneak into the playoffs, but it just is not in the DNA of the chairman or the players or the management to kind of put a cap on their potential and their objectives, and they want to go back to back. It's not been done. That makes it very appealing. They've seen what Ipswich did in terms of getting out of League One and then getting straight into the Premier League. Now look, it's never that straightforward. As much of a fairy tale as it has been for us, it's never gonna be a promotion every single year. We'll run out of leagues to get into unless they create some sort of super league for Wrexham to keep getting promoted into. But look, it's obviously tougher. This will be a tougher league. We're looking at Birmingham. We're looking at Huddersfield. We're looking at Stockport and other teams that we've battled with Stockport for years now in the National League and League Two. But I think in-house, I think they're quietly confident that they can give it a real go.
Onto the players. You mentioned they're playing 3-5-2 and they've had success. I noticed, interestingly, Wrexham haven't averaged much possession in their games this season, so they're obviously doing it in terms of like a counter-attacking style, polar opposite to the way Birmingham City have gone about things with 68% average. Um, who are the players that we should be looking out for in this Wrexham team? I've seen it's a 3-5-2. I know Paul Mullins not getting the game time, or hasn't been getting the game time opening weeks this season. Who are the guys we should be looking out for?
Well, firstly, I would say on the possession point, that is very pertinent this week because Birmingham have loads of the ball and Wrexham, everyone's saying, oh, it's really strange they don't have a lot of the ball. That is definitely by design, and I'm more so this season than I've ever seen it before under Phil Parkinson. We obviously dominated the ball in the National League and in League Two to an extent, really. This season, it seems like we are very comfortable out of possession. And I actually feel like that's giving me confidence going to St Andrews because I looked at Birmingham when they played Walsall. I don't think Walsall had much of the ball and were still able to cause Birmingham problems. People can point to personnel changes, but the general theme was that, Walsall were able to punish Blues without much of the ball. And I think Wrexham will have looked at that game and can see that, with arguably better personnel, no arguments really, that they can cause problems. I would say players to look out for, Ryan Barnett I would pick, who has been probably our best player, one of our best players so far this season at right wing back. Really pacey, really direct, and he's just got boundless energy, and he's good going forward and defending as well. So I think at right wing back, he's a real asset for us. Been one of the best players so far this season. Left Shrewsbury when they were in I think still in League One, and dropped down to Solihull. Rebuilt his career there, joined us, and just continued to go from strength to strength really. So he's definitely one to watch. And I would say the front two, I actually don't think Paul Mullin will start the game on Monday, which is just incredible, really. I think it will be Ollie Palmer again, and I think it will be Jack Marriott. Both of those have been in great form. Ollie Palmer in particular, it'll be a real test for whichever centre-back he ends up sort of dragging himself onto because he's physically immense and he holds the ball up really well. He doesn't really lose much in the air, so that'll be a real battle. And also I'm looking at, if he does play for Birmingham, Mark Leonard against Elliot Lee, those kind of creative types, two exceptional players for me. I really like Mark Leonard. I actually said before the season I think he could be a sort of League One Player of the Year candidate. I know it's taken him a little while to settle down, but Elliot Lee again, another fabulous player, scored against Shrewsbury at the weekend. It is going to come down to moments of magic, especially in big games. You do need somebody to create something out of nowhere, and whether that's going to come from Wrexham's bench. You've got Paul Mullin on the bench, Stephen Fletcher on the bench, probably got somebody like Mo Farl as well, new signing coming from West Brom, 500,000 on the bench. So they'll really stack the deck on the bench in terms of attacking options. But on the pitch, I would look at Elliot Lee and I would look at Ryan Barnett as kind of two players that can hurt Blues in terms of just players to look out for, to be impressed by. Watch Tom O'Connor at left centre back, diamond of a player. He's really, really good. Should be at a higher level. Hopefully, he stays with us and is at that higher level with us. But international call-ups, all these things should be coming very soon for him because he just is. You'll see on Monday night. He's a fabulous footballer, and it's the benefit of having a midfielder converted into a centre back that the passing out from the back is, something to behold for sure.
It feels like we already know the pattern that this game's going to take on, in that Blues are probably going to have a lot of the ball like they have in all their previous home games. And Wrexham, like you say, by design, are going to probably sit back a little bit and look to counter-attack. Are Wrexham a direct team? Because you mentioned Palmer, quite a physical presence. Have they got that in their locker?
Everyone likes to tell me how direct Wrexham are without actually watching Wrexham play. It is amazing. They love to tell me, this hoof ball and Parky plays this horrible football and I laugh now. I find it funny because if you put a cross into Palmer, apparently you've gone back to the dinosaur age of football's not played. Look, Wrexham are not professing to be this tiki-taka new gen Barcelona. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's overlooked how much Wrexham really knock it about. Yeah. The wing backs are key. They are direct with the wing backs, but I mean that is just spreading the ball out wide, using pace and trying to get it into the box. I think that's an effective formula. It's been effective for us. But the likes of Andy Cannon in midfield, George Dobson, Elliot Lee, Ollie Rathbone, they are ball carriers. It's not like the first iteration of Phil Parkinson's team back in the National League days, I felt quite sorry for the midfield because it was going from the back three to the front two, and it was just that it was like kind of one of those tennis crowds for the midfield. They were just looking and it was going over their heads, and I'd feel a bit sorry for them. But nowadays we've got so many good ball players, ball carriers, that it isn't this hoofball thing that people think it is just because we don't have the ball. What we can do is break quickly with a Barnett, with a Seb Revan if he plays, Rotherham's Young Player of the Year last season, with a kind of Cannon who's a box-to-box type. Dobson's great as an industrious kind of breaking play up. Tom O'Connor can play that ball over the top into the channel for a Marriott, for a Mullin. And there are options there for us. So I think we're a little bit more aesthetically pleasing than people want to give us credit for, I think.
Right, we'll be watching the stuff on the football on the pitch, but there is also going to be a lot of attention in the stands, on the stands. Sky Sports obviously picked the game for a reason. Wrexham owners Ryan Reynolds and Ron McElhenney, talk to me a little bit about them and kind of the impact that they've had on Wrexham over the last few years.
Oh yeah, looking at these glasses, you'd think they might be rose tinted. They're not. They're very, very crystal clear. I would say Wrexham have the best owners in all of sports. I would debate you until the computer shut down, because I just think Wrexham just have been blessed with owners who know what they're good at and know what they aren't good at, and what they aren't good at, they find people who are very good at. So they know that they're not football people specifically. So they went and got some top level. Les Reed was at Southampton, great in terms of talent ID, got him in behind the scenes. You've now gone and got Mike Williamson, CEO, previously worked at the likes of Inter Milan. The hires that just wouldn't be possible. And I know you've seen it as well with Birmingham and Knighthead Capital, and people will say, oh, it's Brady's Blues against the Hollywood Reds, and it's kind of so much more going on in the background. But those key figures, Robert McElhenney, Ryan Reynolds and Tom Brady, they know what they're good at, and that's marketing the teams, making them global forces, globally known. And you'd have to say, with the Welcome to Wrexham documentary on Disney, all the kind of ad campaigns they've done, all the social media, pushing for streaming in the National League. They managed to set up National League TV basically because Ryan Reynolds just tagged every one of the clubs. Imagine Ryan Reynolds tagging Yeovil Town and Dorking Wanderers to his 22 million followers. It suddenly moves the needle a little bit. So they've just been great. The amount they've done for the community, for fans, the amount of donations they've made. And I know some critics will say, well, it's all for image and it's all for the cameras. A lot of it you have never heard of. If you don't follow Wrexham day in, day out, there's so many gestures you won't have any idea about. And I'm fortunate enough that I am in the thick of it, and I have seen loads of things they've done away from the cameras, and they do genuinely care, and they care like fans, and they treat it like fans. I think a little bit. They get giddy during the transfer window. They want updates like the rest of us. They're constantly posting on social media about different players and different goals, and unlike the players in the dressing room and Phil Parkinson, who are very level-headed one game at a time, I think they get carried away like the rest of us. So yeah, we absolutely love them. I can't speak highly enough of them.
So we all get giddy during the transfer window, don't we? It's one of the things that Birmingham's owners have constantly said since they took over is that kind of, there's no kind of limit to their potential. You mentioned that earlier with regards to Wrexham as well. Is the end game the Premier League? Can Wrexham realistically get there? I mean, I know Birmingham City have probably get their eyes on Ipswich Town and going back to back from League One to the Premier League, which is why they've strengthened and invested so heavily this summer. Can Wrexham do something like that? Do you think they could reach the Premier League in the next 4 or 5 years or so?
Oh, a good question. And we get asked this all the time now. 4 or 5 years is always that figure bounded around. I think if you're Birmingham, you've been there before. So it's not necessarily this promised land that just felt completely out of reach. You've been there before. You've won a League Cup. You've been in Europe. You know that the building blocks are there. And like you say, I think they are targeting that back to back. Wrexham, it'll have to slow down eventually, won't it? And the Championship is such a difficult league. We haven't been in it for God knows how many years. Not in my lifetime, anyway. And look, if we get out of League One this season and we've gone back to back to back, that is absolutely outstanding. I wouldn't be able to fault it. It's just phenomenal, And but if we don't, that also isn't the end of the world. I think. For me, I'm being slightly more cautious now. I'd say in the next decade, I think that's where you could see Wrexham in the Premier League. And I still think that would be a phenomenal return. In just over a decade, Wrexham get from the 5th division to the 1st division. I think that would be outstanding. The one thing I do think is if you get to the Championship with the money we're seeing in the Championship now, and thanks to you guys, we're seeing in League One, I do just wonder whether they might need that little that little push, that investment backer, that extra backer that can come in and maybe wants to leave Ryan and Rob at the front of it as the faces of the club, but want to kind of help drive it behind the scenes. I'm not sure. Who knows? But they are doing as much as they can to backfill Parkins and get us players, invest in the squad, break the transfer record this summer for Ollie Rathbone, and Mo Farah was not far behind. But, we are talking more in the £500,000 region when you guys have putting in almost 20 million on Jay Stansfield. So the old cliche is there are levels to the game. And I think in the Championship, cohesiveness and kind of small figure buys are only going to get you so far. So let's see. Let's do one league at a time first. Let's talk about the Premier League if we get to the Championship. But is it the aim? 100%.
Yeah, I was going to say, if they do need extra cash, I'm sure Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney have got some decent contacts that come up with that. Just looking back to the summer, there was obviously this talk that this particular fixture could, there's even the suggestion that it could be played in the US. Obviously, both clubs North American owned. What was the kind of Wrexham feeling on that? Because I do remember Ryan Reynolds coming out quite quickly and say, I wouldn't even entertain this. So I guess that supporters don't want it either.
Yeah, I mean, it was taken very badly by Wrexham supporters, and that's no surprise. It's a very sensitive issue for teams at any level. The idea that a domestic match could be taken abroad. Now, I think the North American mindset, not necessarily fans, because there were a lot of North American fans that were outraged at the idea that Wrexham could be brought over there. They want to keep it in Wales. They want to keep it kind of sacrosanct there, that home games are there, or the Birmingham games are in Birmingham. But the North American sort of business mindset is that we can take the NFL and we can play it in Brazil and Germany and the UK for one-offs, and that is huge for the growth of the sport, and the NBA's done it and the MLB's done it. So it didn't surprise me that, the story was that Blues floated the idea, didn't actually put forward a proposal, but just kind of debated it with the league, what were their thoughts, and were quickly shot down. Ryan Reynolds, I think what Ryan Reynolds was shooting down was this idea that he'd had a conversation with Tom Brady about it. I think he was very keen to nip it in the bud. And you know what? There are a lot of owners in sport that would have just ignored that. And I think, it was credit to him for fronting up, really. And there was nothing to front up to. He said he didn't have a conversation. He didn't have a conversation. But, that did kind of nullify it and kind of nip it in the bud. And it didn't let the cycle go on for much longer. And I think that's where he was very savvy, knowing that this is a huge story. There's a lot of uproar around this. Let's just nip it in the bud. I think whenever we see that game go outside of England or England and Wales, I would say that it's probably to be a Premier League game. And who knows, maybe it'll be Blues if they get there in 2 years' time. But look, I would say I can't imagine the EFL getting a jump start on a lucrative venture like that ahead of the Premier League.
No, I agree. Sadly, I do think it's probably inevitable that a league game in this country will be played outside of the UK. So the last thing I want to speak about is the US and the success that Wrexham have had in the US, because Wrexham have been on pre-season tours to the US in the last 2 summers, haven't they? Blues haven't done it yet. We thought they might try it this summer, but in the end, they ended up going to Austria. And I'm sure in the coming years that Blues will go there. It's a difficult market to crack, isn't it? And a lot of clubs, even Premier League clubs, have struggled to crack it. Have Wrexham cracked it?
It's easier when you have sort of 2 Hollywood megastars. That's a pretty good start. I would say if you want a starter pack on how to crack America, having Ryan and Rob is it's a solid start. I'll be honest. It's helped us a lot. I've been fortunate that I've gone out to both of the tours. I managed to do 2 legs, North Carolina and LA of the first one, and I managed to make it out to Vancouver for our first game in Canada. And just the appetite over there for the Wrexham story. And I think, it is different to say Birmingham, where you've had obscurity really in the Championship for a while. You dropped out of the Premier League, struggled in the Championship, and now you've dropped into League One. Wrexham was sold to fans and viewers of the documentary. They're in Division 5. They're essentially, if you want to use baseball, minor league and trying to get to major league, right? So they're in Division 5, and theoretically, Ryan and Rob could take us or take them all the way to Division 1. And that's very appealing to a North American audience who support NFL teams, NBA teams, MLB teams, where there is no jeopardy. If you finish bottom, you finish bottom and you start again next year, and that's absolutely fine. So it can sometimes seem a bit cliche, but the idea of promotion and relegation is very sellable. I know what you're saying about there are other teams that have gone over to America. Premier League teams, if you're not Manchester United or Liverpool, that can be tricky because they have such big fan bases. But Wrexham feels very unique, and I'm sure Birmingham would have, if they went to Boston, for example, I'm sure they would, they would be able to have great success. And if Tom Brady could make appearances here or there, I'm sure that would help. But really, I feel like the Wrexham one is particularly unique, and that's meant for us. It's been hugely successful, and long may it continue. I just wonder, whenever that dip comes, you'd hope that people are already locked in and not going to kind of be swayed by a former, I was going to say by a former New England Patriots quarterback. Yeah, that's the hope.
Yeah, I was going to say, if Blues do go over there, I'm sure they will at some stage. Tom Brady's going to be absolutely key, isn't he, to kind of create an American-based audience for them. So yeah. Nathan, very interesting chatting to you about Wrexham. Really looking forward to the game on Monday, because it will be Blues' first test against kind of real promotion contender. So yeah, thank you for coming on, and thanks everyone for listening along. Please do hit subscribe, like on YouTube, leave a comment. We'll try and get around to them in future episodes. Thank you very much, and a big keep right on.